fossils, badlands, buttes, mesas, petroglyphs, wildlife, wildflowers, and vast vistas. Welcome to Joy Meets World. I'm Joy Yuki, traveling the U.S. national parks with my foxhound Quincy, and today I will be telling you about my adventures at Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona, which is much more than just a petrified forest, as you could probably tell by my introduction. And guys, I'm so excited to tell you about this park. So let's pick up where I left off last episode. I was in Tucson, Arizona, and I drove 4 hours, basically one road, north to a little town called Snowflake, Arizona, which is about 45 minutes to an hour southwest of Petrified Forest National Park. It was a cute little Airbnb that's attached to a house, but it's like an in-law suite. We really enjoyed our time there, really enjoyed Snowflake, Arizona. On the drive up there, we drove through a canyon called the Salt River Canyon. Didn't know I was going to hit this canyon. Drove down into it and then back up it to get to Snowflake. It looks like a mini Grand Canyon. It's so cool. And the Salt River runs through it. I've never heard of the Salt River before I drove through this canyon, so don't feel bad if you haven't either. But I'm so glad we did get to drive through it. The speed limit was really slow. It was about 25 to 35 miles per hour throughout it, just because of all the curves and the steep climbs and drops. But I think it makes it better because you get to really enjoy the views while you're driving. There was also a rest stop area with bathrooms where right at kind of the part where the river is the widest, which was so cool. You could hear it. You can stop and see it. So that was really neat on the way to Snowflake. Snowflake, Arizona. It was cold there. It snowed one morning, about half an inch, and it was gone by the afternoon. The temperature was in the mid to high 40s. It is January, end of January, so that makes sense. And like me, you might assume, for obvious reasons, why Snowflake is named what it is. Come to find out, it's actually named that because two gentlemen in the 1800s who kind of were the earliest settlers of the town were Mr. Snow and Mr. Flake. And so they got together and decided that's what they were going to name the town. They were going to combine their last names, and that's what the town was going to be named. So Snowflake, Arizona. And the host of the Airbnb that I stayed at, her relative, I want to say her great-great-grandfather, maybe 3 greats, was one of the founding fathers, which was cute. The town is not very big, big enough to have a Walmart, so, everyone across America is pretty much familiar with what size town that looks like. Very small, quiet, not a lot going on, but we liked it. It was nice. It was 40 miles from Petrified Forest National Park, which was made a monument in 1906, and it was made a national monument in 1906 because the naturalist John Muir did a lot of work there, and he convinced President Teddy Roosevelt to set it aside as a national monument. Now, it didn't become a national park until 1962. I'm not really sure why. It covers 390 acres, and it has about 644 annual visitors, including me and Quincy. why is it called Petrified Forest National Park? It's really interesting. None of the trails or landmarks inside the park are called Petrified Forest. The main attraction is called Crystal Forest, um, and it is um, a not a forest, although you would think it would be one. But I'm going to read to you from the national park itself why this park is called Petrified Forest National Park. So, the late Triassic era, 200 million years ago, saw the dawn of the dinosaur. The creatures lived here in Petrified Forest National Park in a tropical forest of conifers, tree ferns, and ginkgos. As the trees died and tumbled, some floated down the large river system and formed log jams. Over eons, the wood absorbed silica, with mineral crystallizing and transforming the wood to stone that assumed the hues of specific minerals. Pink is manganese, red is iron, and green-blue is chromium, cobalt, and copper. This is the only national park closed at night to discourage thieves from poaching samples. The painted forest, with its wrinkly mounds of undulating colors, spans the park's northern section. Overall, the park receives less than 10 inches of rain a year, just enough to support cacti, mariposa lilies, and creatures such as the rock wren. So essentially, the crystal forest and the large logs, which is one of the kind of trails that I walked, are these giant fossilized tree trunks that look like agate. If you've ever seen agate with its colors like green, pink, red, it's like tree trunks, but they're made of agate. So essentially, these areas that are a part of the park, the wood has been petrified or turned to stone. And so that's why it's called Petrified Forest National Park. Is it a forest? Would you look at these trails and say it's a forest? No. Would you say a forest had been there? No. Would you say a bunch of logs had been dumped there and maybe like blown around and scattered there and then turned into stone? Yes. Like many places just looked like, how you have logs around a campfire to sit on. It was like those logs turned to stone, and just in like specific areas and just a couple of them. I would never have thought there was a forest there in any of the places. But it was really cool seeing the logs turn to stone. It's hard to like process, honestly, that's what it is. But it was neat to see those. I would say the most amazing part of the park is that, like I started this podcast with, it's so much more than just the petrified wood. So I went to the park twice. I went once at sunset, so I arrived at 4 p.m. and that was not intentional to see the sunset. I was not thinking, and I left later in the afternoon, and it took longer than I thought it would to get there. I didn't realize the park closed at 5 p.m. Apparently, a lot of other people didn't either, because I had quite a few visitors there with me. So I only had time from 4 to 5 p.m. to basically tour or hike the areas with petrified wood, which was cool. And I got a lot of cool visuals of the sunset, like with the rocks. There's also vistas, so you can see for miles across the desert to like the San Francisco mountains, and like buttes in the distance. Like you can see so far. So it was really cool to see that, like as the sun was going down, and just to see it in that light. It was really neat. So I'm glad it was. I thought at first it was going to be a mistake, that I like wouldn't really enjoy my time, would be too rushed. The park rangers were really nice. They were like, no, go for it. You should totally do this. You have enough time. So that was awesome. The second visit, I decided to go back in the morning just because there's about 9 or 10 different stop off points of places that you can see. I didn't see a lot of places to hike. There's a road that goes 26 miles through the park, and there's about, I'm gonna say, 12 different places you can stop and like walk for a mile or just view different landmarks. So I went back in the morning because Quincy could stay in the car while I parked and kind of saw all the different things there were to see. The one of the things that I saw was it's called an Agate Bridge. So it is a petrified log that spans across this canyon that's turned to stone, and that was really cool. Um, the there's just these, I don't even know what geographic feature, but you can look on my Instagram reel and see like just these kind of canyon like structures and like grooved hills that were so cool. I've never seen anything like that. There were mountain structures called teepees, the teepees, and they look exactly what they sound like. That was really neat to see. Also, Old Route 66 from legend runs through the park. So you can stop at a spot and kind of look at it and take a picture, which is really, really neat. About halfway through the park, you go over Route 66. So that was a surprise and a really cool feature. So that's really all about Petrified Forest National Park. I think the best parts of this part of the trip was that the park was way more than I expected it to be. So the Petrified Forest part wasn't what I was expecting. It was still cool, but then there was so much more to this park than I had thought of, that I knew. And you read about these things, but you're not really sure what they're talking about until you go and you see it. And it kind of dawns on you just how much more there is to the park. I also think at this park and really throughout the parks, the park rangers have been really helpful. They're super enthusiastic about what they're doing and the parks they're serving at. And I think that's really neat when you're visiting for the first time and don't really know what you're doing. Or like me, who only really had an hour that first night. I just asked the park ranger, if you had an hour to do something at this park, what would you do? And he was like, these are the two things you need to go do. You have time. Go now. So that was awesome, and I'm thankful for it. I think my lessons from this trip was to definitely get to the park earlier. And I'm realizing now as I do more and more research on the parks that most of them do close at 5. So it's good to I think go in the warmest part of the day, which is typically in the afternoon after lunch, but a couple of hours before 5 o'clock so that, you don't feel rushed because then you don't really enjoy your time. And also have a ton of water on you. Quincy and I have never had so much water, been so thirsty. I mean, we drank gallons of water. And you're so, so thirsty. Even just driving, I cannot stop drinking water. So you can imagine just hiking in the dryness. And if there's any sun, you just get so darn thirsty very, very quickly, which I know to be true because it's a drier climate out here in higher elevation. So you're going to need water and stay hydrated. So that's a lesson and just a takeaway, just tons and tons of water. So next up, I am not going to the Grand Canyon or Sedona, not that Sedona is a national park, next, even though I am in Arizona. There's one more park I'm visiting in Arizona. It will be Joshua Tree National Park. And then I will head over to California. I'm just kidding. What am I saying? I'm in California. At Joshua Tree. I'm going to California next. to Joshua Tree. I'm not hitting the Grand Canyon. I'm not hitting Sedona because I already done those in 2019. They were on the first national parks on my bucket list, so I had done them already. Except again, Sedona is not a national park, but I did it. And so those are already checked off, so I'm not going to go back there. Just doing national parks I haven't done yet. So I can't wait to tell you about Joshua Tree in the Golden State. If you have a comment or question about this episode or an upcoming one, the best way to do that is to follow me on Instagram, comment on one of my posts or reels that have to do with your question, or DM me, and I'd be happy to address it or research it a little bit more or add it to the next podcast. If you'd like, you can rate and review this podcast, which would just be a general rating and a general review, and that would be super helpful. That's it for me. Until next time, I wish you happy trails wherever life is taking you.